Kia ora te whānau. I am Victoria Kelly from APRA AMCOS. I'm the Director of New Zealand Member Services there, and it's my great pleasure to welcome everybody to this, our second masterclass in New Zealand's May Music Month, where we've been celebrating everything to do with New Zealand music. And today we are doing the same thing, plus including one of our sisters from across the Tasman. And so we are going to talk today about production. And it's my hope that there will be gems of wisdom and tips and stories and amazing things for people to take away about creating music in their own homes, producing music, everything about the architecture of songs, and what production is these days, because it's not one thing. It's as many different things as there are producers, and we've got 5 quite good producers here to talk to today. I'm really delighted to have this group of kind of blinding star power assembled here online. We have Joel Little, producer of Lorde and of Taylor Swift and Jared James and Imagine Dragons and many, many other people. We have Kings, producer of Kings, who kind of needs no introduction. We've got Alex Hope, producer of Troye Sivan and Broods, and collaborated with Jack Antonoff. We have Devin Abrams, formerly from Shapeshifter and also currently Pacific Heights, who produces Drax Project. And last but not least, we have Josh Fountain of Leisure, and who has produced, among many other things, countless things, Benee. And we're going to be talking about all of their music, all of their careers, and all of their deep, dark secrets. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming and being here. It's lovely to see you all. I'm going to start. There are going to be opportunities for questions, so please, everybody watching, flick through your questions on the chats, and Lydia Jenkin, who's on the other end, will send them through to me, and I will try to phrase them in a good way. And in the meantime, what we did prior to this starting was create a Spotify playlist, and there's a link on the side about that too, talking about music by these guys that I love, that they've produced, music that they have produced that they want to talk about, music that they love by either a New Zealand or Australian producer, and a favourite piece of production from anywhere in the world. Because so often it's hard to talk about your own work, but it's heaps of fun talking about someone else's work. So I thought I would dive straight in, because there were 2 different songs that were chosen by more than one person in this group. And the first one was Multi-Love by Unknown Mortal Orchestra, which both Joel Little and Devin Abrams chose. Joel and Devin, tell us about Multi-Love and why you love it. What was the thing that stood out about that just caught your ear from a production perspective?
After you, Devin, you want to go?
All right. I love everything about that track. It's just got this edginess and grit to it, but it's such a heavy subject matter that the lyrics are kind of diving into. And yeah, I love that they did it themselves, and it's just, beautiful warmth in it. It sounds like it's taken you on this crazy journey. It sounds like nothing else to me, and I'm proud that something like that came from New Zealand.
Yeah. What about you, Joel?
I agree with all that. I'm constantly kind of in awe of those guys, the brothers, and what they do. That was their that whole record I love, but I just had to choose a song. But that was, just the fact that they're using synths much more predominantly for that album was really interesting to me. But then they still, just the musicality of the whole thing, the chords that they use are so much more advanced than anything that I could ever come up with. And their bass lines and the drum sounds and the drum patterns and just the way that it all combines is such a unique and it's just a unique and special thing that they do. I don't think they sound like anybody else. So.
No, they don't. They really don't. Is it hard to take your producer's ears off when you listen to music? Like, do you start immediately hearing like too much of a particular frequency or weird placements that kind of start interfering with your ability to enjoy music? Or does sometimes its kind of brilliance kind of cause you to think about your own work instead of listening to what someone else has made? Does that happen?
I never really I never listen to music from a technical point of view. definitely am not much of a technical producer myself. Like, I'm not listening to something going, that needs a little less 2K. I'm just going like, how does this make me feel?
Yeah.
And so I'm sure if a lot of producers looked at, and I know Josh has looked at some of my sessions, they've gone, holy crap, this this is pretty roughly put together. But the end result is, I'm just trying to get something that sounds special at the end. So however I get there, I'm fine with. It doesn't have to be a technical thing. And same with whatever I'm listening to.
Yeah. So Josh Fountain, what does roughly put together mean? On the spot.
Well, I think that's kind of, I don't know if that's quite the right word, but when I was, so basically I'm in Golden Age at the moment. So this is where Joel started and did all the Lorde stuff. So when Joel went to the States, I took over here.
Yeah.
And one day I sort of saw on the backup drives that there was a bunch of Lorde sessions on there. So I messaged Joel like, oh, would you mind if I had a look through the Royals session, so that I could find that one secret trick that Joel knew that we were all, the one secret plugin that he had that we all didn't have.
Interesting.
And yeah, it was really...
It's like going through the panty drawer.
I guess so. You're going through Joel's panties and I tried them on.
Nice.
And it was so interesting to see a session that was, like a #1 hit. And it was just disappointingly simple. Like it was just, there was no secret going on. It was just, perfect, like the kick and the snap and stuff that you're hearing on the record, well, that was in the session, funnily enough, and the vocals, like they sounded like you hear on the radio, and there wasn't any crazy secrets going on. It was just like brilliant songwriting and brilliant sound selection decisions, and not overproducing something. So, and I thought it was very tight. You should see some of my sessions.
So it's funny that you mentioned Royals, because that was the other song that two people chose to talk about. You did, and Alex Hope chose to talk about Royals as well. Oh, so would you have done the same thing, Alex? Would you have kind of rifled through Joel's production sessions if you had found them in a studio?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, I met Joel when I was like 18 at a APRA songwriting camp in Sydney when you had done Royals, but it hadn't been released. And I remember you like kind of talking about it a little bit. And then, yeah, when it came out, I was like, oh my God. So yeah, I definitely would have gone through that session.
I wrote down a couple of notes about my impressions of each of your music in terms of like just listening with my own ears and trying to identify a couple of aspects of each of your work, which I think is kind of astonishing to me. And in Joel's case, it's the economy, like exactly like Josh just said. It's exactly what you leave out, and it's the economy of the sounds, the crispness of it, those snaps. They're just so, and it's all kind of, it's dry and it's intimate. It feels very close to you when you listen to it, yet there's almost nothing there. It's almost skeletal. And I reckon you carry that on into lots of your other production. Is that something that you do consciously, Joel?
Yes, I've definitely done stuff that's a lot more laid up. I feel like it just depends on the artist, and it depends on the song. My main thing when I'm producing or writing or whatever is just trying to find the best way to help tell the story of the song. And so I love songs where you don't need that much else to tell a story. If the vocal and the melody and the lyric are that good, that you can just kind of place things around them that strengthen them rather than distract from them, then that's kind of the main goal. And then, other times if it's like an Imagine Dragons song, for example, then you want that big payoff in the chorus where it's going to be massive drums and big guitars and big synths and all of that stuff, because that's a part of who they are and the way that they sound. So if it feels genuine for the artist, then then I'm all about it. But I like the idea of not repeating myself too much. I want to try and keep things varied and not be doing the same thing on every song.
But that's obviously a challenge, because when any of you create something that's really successful, and all of you have done that, the temptation of everybody around you would be to ask you to repeat yourselves constantly, right? So, for you Kings, you're a self-producing artist. You come out with Don't Worry About It, and everyone loves it. And then does everybody want you to keep writing that same song with that same kind of stack of vocals and same kind of beat, the same kind of feel?
Yeah, of course. I was signed to a label at the time as well. So, I mean, that kind of pressure's going to happen, I think when you're kind of have, I guess, especially because it was my first single, to have like a quick success like that. They're like, yo, we need more of that fire and that kind of thing. And my second single just wasn't that. Like, I didn't want to do that. My second single was actually like an ode to Prince.
Yay.
Yeah, it's like my idol. So it was like a full-on like sloppy 90 BPM like dance track. And they were just like, this isn't really what we wanted. And I was like, I don't care. And that's probably why they dropped me.
Hey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We dropped each other. We realized that I was better suited as who I am now, which is just independent. Yeah.
Awesome. So how did you recreate the kind of sloppy 90 BPM Prince sound? Did you use a drum machine or anything?
By loving him. It was just before he passed too. Like, he just came here for a concert and he passed not too long after the concert. Yeah. And so I was always inspired by him. My dad used to listen to him a lot. Cream was a big joint at the house.
Yeah.
So I think it was just kind of like, I don't want to repeat, similar to what Joe was saying. You don't want to kind of repeat yourself over and over. You want to try new things. Oh. So I just went straight to like synthology style stuff. I'll play the joint sometime, but yeah, I was really proud of it, and it just didn't hit like how I wanted it to. But yeah, it's cool. I love it. Still love it.
You have to be able to take risks, creatively. Otherwise, there's really no point.
100%.
I've got questions coming through, so I'm going to just throw a couple of these in. One is, what's your favorite plugin? Can we go through everybody, and can you all say what your favorite plugin is? Alex.
That's a really hard question. I would probably say Decapitator, Sound Toys, but there's so many that I don't want. Yeah, but that's the one that comes to mind first.
Why?
Because it just makes everything sound so. It just beefs everything up and really like gives it grit, if that's what you're looking for. I don't know. I love it on drums. I love it on like vocals sometimes. I just think it just adds a lot of attitude, I guess.
Devin Abrams, your favorite plugin?
The one that makes everything sound better.
The Oral Exciter?
Actually, I'd say one I do love is a classic Waves plugin, because I'm a bit of a bass head. So I love R-bass. I just love saturating bass. I'm sure everyone on this panel's probably mess around with saturating their bass. I don't know. I love bass.
So what do you mean by saturating bass?
Just playing with harmonics and saturating certain harmonics in a bass tone. And
right.
The R-bass is great. It's real simple to use, and yeah, it's kind of idiot proof, which I like. Yeah, that's probably my favorite.
Nice. Josh Fountain.
My favorite plugin is very boring. Probably like the FabFilter Pro Q3. It's just like an EQ, but it's a brilliant EQ, and people say, well, how good can an EQ be? But it really is like, it's the best EQ. It's the only EQ that you need. So that'll be my very sensible choice, I think.
Nice. Kings.
Yeah. Oh man, the Decapitator, the Sound Toys, the whole lot, they're nuts, man. Like Alter Boy, I play with heaps. It's like a voice modulator. Yeah. Well, it's not just for voice. You can use it for a lot of things. It actually sounds really buzzy on guitar if you play with it. But yeah, the Sound Toys bunch is sick. I love all that stuff, man. So good.
Awesome. Joel?
I agree with all of the above. The one that I've been using a lot is this one called RC20 Retro Color, which I know a lot of other people use.
That's great.
that it just instantly gives things character, and you can mess around with it in a lot of different ways, and can bring like a really nice vintagey feel to things. I use it on strings and guitars and all sorts of stuff.
Can you hear when some other producer like really loves the same plugin? Can you hear the plugin at work?
Sometimes,
yeah.
Sometimes
you can hear the RC20 over pretty much every song at the moment.
Can you?
Yeah,
what
definitely.
Is it like a quality or a frequency thing, or what is it?
Oh, there's a certain sound that it gets. Like, well, first of all, there's like puts a vinyl noise through everything, like a lo-fi kind of vinyl noise, which you can subconsciously recognize. And there's a way that their wobble works, where you can hear it on guitars or hear it on kind of any kind of synth. If anything sounds tapey and wobbly and fluttery, then it'll be RC20. But because you can put it on anything and it just makes it sound like you could have it the most basic piano patch, stock piano patch, and you chuck RC20 on it and it'll just sound super vibey and cool. So it's such a good like plug-in in that respect. There's a couple new ones now that Waves cassette, and there's another one, but everyone else is bringing out these lo-fi plugins.
VHS, there's a VHS one for Reactor, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
While we're on the topic of plugins, I'm seeing questions come through more about plugins. What are the essentials? The essential plugins that you can't live without? Like if you were talking to a bedroom producer and you were going to give them one plugin that they really needed to have that was going to make a big difference to their work, what would it be? Let's go in reverse order. Let's start with Joel and go back round.
I mean, there's no one plugin. I think everything that everyone has said are all great things to have for various reasons. I love the Fab Filter EQ as well. Use that all the time. I love the Fab Filter DS as well for vocals. I throw that on pretty much every single vocal that I do. The Sound Toys bundle has got all sorts of different things that give songs lots of character.
Kings, what do you reckon is essential?
Yeah, a good EQ above anything, I think. Only just because like you can cut, like compressing, you know, like if you compress anything, like if you got a crap sound, it's going to be louder and crap. So like to have at least a little bit of control would be the one thing any producer, if you wanted to, would be control over the sound. But same, like everything's so dope, man. Like a good reverb is nice. You can have reverb and have shitty reverb. It'll be fun, you know?
Reverb is like not, I've noticed how dry music is these days. I grew up in the 80s. There was a lot of reverb. There was some long reverbs in the 80s. But now, like vocals particularly are super crisp, really present, and really, they feel like they're right up in your head when you listen to them. Like you can hear all of the textures. There's lots of air. Is that something that, because it's like a prevailing sound for vocals, do you consciously try to make vocals sound like that so that they sit in mixes the way that you hear a lot of vocals sitting in mixes? Josh?
I think it completely depends on the song, you know, like you'd have a really dry, you know, the drier a vocal is, the more upfront it feels. So if you've got like a soft vocal or you want it to feel like your person's like right up in your face, then you would have a dry vocal. And then, you know, if you want it to make it feel like someone's hitting a high note, or you want the vocal to feel big, that's when you chuck it through a big reverb. And it completely depends on the song. I think maybe there might be something to do with the way people are consuming music as well, like listening off their phones, and like you just want I mean, at the end of the day, the reality is no one really cares about the production. Like people don't really realize what's going on. They just want to hear the vocal, and they want to hear the song, and maybe they notice the kick and the snare and whatnot, and they kind of get a sense of the music. But it's all about that vocal. So if you can have that as clear and crisp as possible, then that's, you know, that's always the goal, I think, and something that has taken way longer than it should have for me to realize that at the end of the day, it's all about the vocal. So if that means not drenching a vocal in reverb and just having it up front, then that's kind of what you
I feel like Billie Eilish's vocal production is insane. Like I don't know what they're doing with that, because she sounds like she's right in front of the mic, she's like, but it just sounds like so dope.
And isn't it like, well, I saw some video of Phineas, her brother and producer, who's like, they record it through like a Focusrite, and like there's no fancy gear or anything. They still record in their bedroom, and just like real kind of whispery vocals.
But isn't that interesting how the stuff that like changes the way that people hear things is always the stuff that happens in people's bedrooms where they're not using fancy stuff, but they're actually just using their resourcefulness and their kind of creative thinking to make a sound the way that they want to hear it. Because all the plugins in the world, like just going back to the question about what's an essential plugin, the most essential plugin I would imagine would be your own ability to kind of seek out the noise that you want to make and realize it in the real world with whatever gear you've got to hand. You know, you might, anyway. What Josh was saying about the delivery method that people are kind of using to consume music, I think that's really interesting, because of course that would affect the way that production happens if people are having to take into account what the sound's going to be coming through. Is that something, Alex, that you think about when you're producing? Do you think about what people will be listening on?
I mean, sometimes it's a little bit sad to think sometimes that people are gonna just listen off of their phone, because they are kind of just gonna get the vocal and the kick and the snare. Like, it's not gonna be the full, like the bass isn't there and stuff like that. But I definitely still feel like, as Josh was saying, like the vocal is the most important thing, and the story and the lyric, and for people to hear that. So it's like, yeah, I guess I do think about it, but I also want to think about it, you know, that people are listening in their cars, or people are listening on headphones, or people, I think at the end of the day, it's just like supporting the song the best way you can with the production, and yeah. I think I think listening through, you have to take into account frequencies and stuff like that, but I just think it's about the song, and people just want to hear the top line a lot of the time. Like, they just want to hear the melody and the lyrics, and you're just kind of supporting that with the production. But at the end of the day, that's, you know, people aren't always going to listen on like the monitors that you made the song on.
It's just such a shame, isn't it? It would be nice if you could download a song with the monitors. Maybe one day. A question's come through. I was just, as you were kind of talking about that, I was thinking to myself, I just wonder how much external pressure comes down on producers, the pressure of expectation and what people want songs to do. And when they work with you, if they're working with you and they're familiar with other work that you've done, how much of that they want to borrow from you to apply to their own work. And a question that's just come through is kind of aligned to that a little bit. If your goal is to write a chart-topping banger, are there any unspoken principles, standards, or fundamentals that you rely on to increase your chance of success at writing a chart-topping banger? Let me ask Devin Abrams. It's so mercenary, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really got the huge hits the other panelists have here, so I'm not going to go and say that I've done that, but I've never really had that attitude personally. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's been times when we're writing a song and it's like, this is really fucking good, and you're like, this could be a hit, but I can't say I've honestly ever gone into a session going, let's write a chart-topping banger.
Yeah.
I don't know about anyone else on the panel, but I don't know. Haven't done that yet.
What about you, Alex? Do you get asked to write chart-topping bangers?
No, I mean, no. I think that's I don't know. I'm just always just there to try and tell a story with someone and help them get something off their chest. And I think that if you focus on that, you probably have a better chance of accidentally writing a chart-topping banger than actually kind of going in with like, all right, let's, because I just think that's impossible. You know, I think you just have to make something honest and something that you really love and that you're like, oh, I want to listen to this. and hope that it resonates. I don't think you can ever go in with that kind of
in mind.
Yeah, you're just kind of setting yourself up to be disappointed, probably.
Absolutely.
I don't know, Joel, tell us.
I mean, my number one rule with writing a chart-topping banger is to not try and write a chart-topping banger. I feel like I have tried that in the past, and in LA as well, there are people who that is their thing every day. You know, you go, I just personally am terrible at that, and I've been in situations where I've gone into a session and, you know, we're like, what, trying to talk about like, what do we feel like writing about today? And someone's like, let's write a smash. And you're like, oh no, I know it's going to go terribly, because as soon as you start thinking like that, you start thinking about what other people want to hear. And you're like,
yes,
what's going to make this song? Does this sound like a smash? I don't know. And it's like, does this sound like everything else that's out right now is kind of what you're asking, you know? And it just stops you from doing anything unique and original generally.
Yes.
So I think having that, it's like a massive limitation that's put on the song, is trying to approach it as if it's going to be a smash. It just puts up a lot of roadblocks and you don't get to do anything creative and interesting. So I try and avoid that as much as possible.
When you find yourselves in sessions where there are expectations that are kind of different from yours or incompatible with yours, how do you cope with that? Like if somebody, you know, like to go back to the chart-topping banger metaphor, and somebody sits down and asks you to write one, and you just know immediately that means that you're not compatible with that person because they're thinking differently from you about music. What do you do then? Do you stand up and say, maybe this isn't going to work out? Do you see it through?
Yeah, I'm just a polite Kiwi and I just suffer through the entire day and then leave knowing that no one will ever hear that song because it sucks.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still, you know, you never know. Sometimes people say that and then you can kind of steer it in a different direction, but it depends. There's so much of if a song is good or not comes down to, you know, the collaborative aspect and the people that are a part of it. And so, yeah, generally I know that the day is going to go bad, but I'm far too polite to say anything, and I'll just hang in there.
There are a lot of questions coming through about that kind of collaborative situation, and a lot of people wanting to know how to begin that process. So when you kind of find yourself in a room with somebody that you're going to work with, like for instance, one of the songs of Josh's that we were going to talk about is Super Lonely with Benee. And, you know, that is a great collaboration that you have been nurturing, the two of you, for a long, long time together. And I think that song probably had a really interesting genesis. How do you begin on the road to a collaboration like that?
Yeah, there was an interesting song because that came off the back of a trip that Stella and I did to the States last year. And, you know, we went off to do this writing trip to get, you know, primarily as a way for Stella to kind of work with other writers and producers and to kind of, you know, test the waters a little bit and get a bit of experience doing that. And so, yeah, Super Lonely came about. I think I arrived on the Friday, and then Saturday we went into the studio and did Super Lonely with Jenna Andrews, who we had met through APRA, through Song Hubs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, well, that's where I connected with her, and she really wanted to work with Stella, and she had a great energy, which is always, I feel like, for me, I'm the most like, if I love a song, I say, oh, this is cool. And if I don't like a song, I say, oh, yeah, the song is cool. Like, I'm not someone who's jumping around the room and like giving lots of energy. So whenever I, you know, get the chance to work with someone who can bring a lot of energy like Jenna is gold. And that song was kind of one of those classic songs that you hear about where people say, oh, we did it in half an hour, you know, and it just kind of came together and we weren't thinking. And I mean, it took a little bit longer than half an hour, maybe like 4 hours or 3 hours or something. But it was one of those ones where everything just sort of fell into place and we weren't overthinking it. And again, we weren't sort of trying to do anything. Stella had an idea of, you know, she wanted to she had been through a breakup, and she wanted to write a breakup song, but she didn't want to write a sad one. And she wanted something with you know, something with guitars in it. So, which, you know, I can't really play guitar anymore. So I was panicking, found some like guitar chord in my sample and used that, and then pitched it down like 7 semitones. And those are pretty much the 2 chords in the whole song, and chucked RC20 on it and chucked a reverb on it. And that was kind of set the vibe, and chucked in the most simple drum pattern of all time. And I remember like looking for a synth patch in Arturia Lab, and I just picked the first one that had a cool name, and I remember it was called Soda Beach, and that's the synth patch that's on the song, and the bass is all just me playing it. This like Contact Rickenbacker bass, and I was just furiously trying to scramble to put something together while Stella and Jenna were sort of talking, and yeah, we ended up with this song at the end of the day, and we were super pumped on it. But I remember thinking it was probably a little bit too pop for Stella, or like I wasn't sure if she'd be into it. And yeah, that's sort of how that song all came together. Just like everything kind of worked out, and there were heaps of like happy accidents as well that happened in that song, where you know, I dragged the drums across for the second verse and dragged them to the wrong spot, and that meant that now the second verse had no drums, and the drums came back in on the pre-chorus, where in the first pre-chorus there were no drums. And that also meant that the BVs underneath the pre-chorus were now underneath the second chorus, but it still works, you know. And it was like, oh. So for me, the biggest challenge for that song was you know, not overproducing it, you know. And it's again something that a reason why Royals was such an important song for me was seeing how a lot of the time it's just, you know, not overcooking it, which I'm so good at overcooking songs and sucking all the life out of them, thinking that I need to do all these things to it, and just realizing we captured the energy of this day and everything's in there, and just leave it alone and don't mess with it. So
how does a person stop themselves from overcooking an idea? Because I do that all the time. I am the worst creative overthinker in the world. I clutter things up, and then I get attached to everything, and I never want to take anything out, and it all just goes. What is the spoke that you can stick in that wheel? Do you have a spoke you can stick in that wheel, Devin?
For me, I've always just found sometimes it's just taking a break, and that could be often just even like taking a week off of a song, and you come back to it and you haven't listened to it in a week. You're like, oh wow, that chorus kind of sucks. I'm going to remix that, and then you pull everything out and start again. And sometimes even you come back and you go, this is actually really good. I'm just going to pull a couple of things out, or tweak the mix a touch and see how it feels, and it kind of comes right. Yeah, I think. Being decisive is quite good, you know, trusting your gut, like Josh was saying, you know, and Joel as well, not overcooking the production, just trust your gut. And the old break things worked for me if I'm struggling with that.
When you've kind of had the beautiful moment that Josh was describing just before, where you kind of write the song and it comes out and it's been a really instinctive process, I'm interested to know what happens next. Like then, when you're left with it as the producer, as opposed to the top liner, and you start thinking, okay, well, I might just try this, or I might try that. How long then do you spend manipulating details, Alex? Do you spend a lot of time, once that initial creative flush is done, do you then start going down the rabbit warren?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I usually put way too much stuff in, like while we're writing, just kind of trying to keep it going and exciting and the vibe. And then I take stuff out. And I try and clean it up, and I try and kind of like leave space for the vocal And yeah, I think for me, I throw all my ideas in while we're kind of creating to kind of get it out of them, and then I trim all of it back to kind of let the song breathe. And then, I mean, but other times we might write a song and it might just be like a piano vocal, and then I kind of have to go in and beef it up. But yeah, I still think it's just letting the song breathe. And I think it just totally depends on the song, how much time you kind of spend on it after. But yeah, that's kind of my way of working, I guess, is throwing everything in and then taking it out again.
Do you ever use that Brian Eno idea where you take your favorite thing out and try to make the song work without the thing you love best about it?
I haven't done that, but I should. I think I would freak out, but I'm sure it's a good test.
It's traumatizing, actually, to do it sometimes. To like just select your little thing that you love so much and just delete. Horrible. Has anyone else ever tried that? No, just like shaking heads. So Kings, you're kind of an exception in this group because you're a self-producing artist. So how do you discipline yourself to remove things?
Yeah.
Like, do you know, as a you're new to collaborating, and I know that you have collaborated, but you're kind of like the generator of everything.
Yeah, it's hard, man. Yeah, I have to kind of wear different hats, I guess, because I'm being the label as well. I have to kind of think. It's a bit of a schizophrenic process for me. As a producer, I guess I'm always trying to look for like what the star of the production would be. So usually the vocal, but I mean, if there's a dope guitar lead, then that would be kind of the focus point, and kind of digging stuff out to make that prominent. As an artist, I've always just wanted to write stuff that I love. So it's kind of like a combination of technically trying to make something that's sonically cool, and then be an artist that just wants to rap or just wants to write. And it does get difficult. Like it gets, like I get in my head sometimes. I'll be like, I can't get this right. And I'll be like, I love the beat, but I hate the writing, or I love the writing and I hate the beat. And yeah, just an internal struggle.
And do you then try to seek out other people who will feed into that for you so that you're not all alone making those decisions? More
so now. Yeah. I got to meet Devin through the Opera Song Hubs again. Opera Song Hubs seems to be a bit of a common thing in this thing. Connecting musicians since ages ago. But yeah, even working with Devin in that small time, and Rory Noble, shout out to Rory. I got to really understand that process and how it works, and it was really cool. I'm actually like way better collaborating since that.
Yeah. So going back to that question of earlier, when you're kind of beginning that collaborative process, like for you as a person going into that quite fresh, how did it feel to begin with? How did you make yourself comfortable?
I thought I was going to be like, I thought I was going to be shit. I was like, I'm going to be shit at this. And then, I had so much fun, man. Like I remember like being like, what about this idea? And then I'd sit there and they're like, that's a cool idea. I was like, yeah, I'm cool. This is fucking cool. And then, like 7 songs? I think I wrote 7 songs in that thing. I went crazy.
Yeah, you were a star, bro, there.
Oh, it was fun, man. And so, I mean, but I guess that was all that pent up by myself kind of thing, and then going out and talking to people. So it's cool.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
I'm so glad that you had such a good experience. That's awesome.
The party was dope too.
So in terms of the work that you do as producers, I mean, I said right at the beginning that a producer, I mean, that's a word, but it doesn't really mean the same thing for all people. Your co-writers, your sound engineers, your psychologists, your kind of pretty much everything in a creative space. Where do you, I'd be really interested to know for each of you how, what the balance is for you. Do you consider yourself first and foremost a writer? Do you consider yourself first and foremost kind of an architect of sound and an arranger? Or do you consider yourself to be lyricists? Like what's the makeup of how you view yourself as a creative entity? Can we start with Alex? It's possibly an unfair question.
It feels very layered. But no, I think, I don't know. I mean, I was signed first as a songwriter, and the production thing kind of came later. And I think it came with just wanting to have a little bit more control over the songwriting process. And but I think the psychologist thing is a really big aspect, especially when you're working with, you know, different artists. I think that is a really big thing, because the main thing is just like is making an artist feel comfortable enough to want to tell you, you know, what they're going through, what they want to write about. And I just think that yeah, that's a really important part of it. So I don't know, I feel like you kind of have to wear a lot of hats, but I think that's what's so great about it. Is, you know, I like to, and it's usually just reading the room. And if you have an artist that's like a ridiculously strong lyricist and they just want to kind of sit in their head and puzzle things, then it's like, okay, cool, I'll step back and focus more on the music. Or if you have an artist that's also an insane guitarist, it's like, all right, I'm going to let you do that. It's basically about kind of sitting back. Yeah, if you have an artist that struggles with lyrics, then I'll kind of jump in and help them work stuff out. So I think, yeah, it's a lot about just like reading the room and then sitting back into whatever role the session might need at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, that I can imagine that it would be a constantly evolving thing, that you're actually not even just a person with multiple skills that you use in different percentages, for want of a better word, in any given moment, but just at each person that you work with will bring a different thing out of you. So one part of you will come to the fore, and then one part of you will step back, depending on who you're working with.
Yeah.
What about you, Devin?
I think Alex summarized it great. You've got to wear many hats. I remember Quincy Jones saying that, you know, you're a therapist, basically, sometimes psychiatrist. And, you know, sometimes you do a session and you spend the whole time just talking about life, and maybe that's what that particular collaboration was about. And then the next session, you know, you've relieved some of that tension and you can go into the next session with some relief. But yeah, as a producer, you're very much there to support the story of the song and the artist, and you know, you try and be as subtle as possible where necessary, and if you need to be a driver, you can be a driver as well.
It also sounds like a job where you have to be incredibly disciplined about your own ego. You know, like you would be walking into rooms with a whole range of different ego expressions in people, and some people with enormous profiles, or other people, and all of these other things that kind of interfere with the creative process. How do you manage ego in a writing room with somebody? Can I ask you, Joel?
You certainly can. I don't know. I think that the Kiwi way helps a lot in those situations. I feel like I've had experiences where I've had people in LA come to my studio, and, you know, the first day there, they're like fully dressed up like they're about to shoot a music video, and then I'm like, hey, how's it going? You know, come in and, like, do you want a coffee or whatever? And then the next day they show up and they're in their pajamas, basically, because they realize that they don't have to put on a show for me. You know, they don't have to be that person. I think it helps to, you know, whatever you need to do to make people feel comfortable is the most important thing. I don't I don't know. It's very, it's, I think separating yourself from the song and what you think. I mean, you got to do what you think is right for the song, but you mainly got to do what you think is right for the artist. And so it's not like, oh, I really love it. It basically comes down to what their vision is. You're just trying to help them achieve that, and if that's helping them figure that out, then that's great. But you can't be, you know, I'm not going into the studio with Taylor Swift and being like, hey Taylor, you should write a song about, like, you know, because she has things that are important to her that she wants to say, and so I'm not trying to force anything onto anybody. It's more just helping them along with their what they're trying to do.
It's a very nurturing kind of role, it seems to me. Like all of you, the way that you describe the way that you work with people, it's a really supportive, really nurturing kind of role, which is possibly kind of words that people don't necessarily immediately think of when they think about music producers. But there's something kind of it's a very generous kind of thing to do with people, I reckon. And then, of course, if you're also, I find it really fascinating too for the self-producing artists and the people who are working on their own stuff, and how there are a lot of people like that, especially in New Zealand. Actually, we're really quite fiercely independent. I wonder then, advice for self-producing artists to kind of be able to support themselves and their own creative processes, and how to get out of their own heads sometimes and seek out some of the things that you offer artists when you work with them. What do you reckon, Kings?
Yeah, well, man, firstly, probably wasn't as possible as it is now as it was maybe 5-10 years ago, just with the gear and the kind of quality of gear that's available to everybody for like $200. Even mastering, I've used mastering websites to get an idea of how mastering is done, which also was something like a $2,500 process, which is now $29 a month.
Yeah.
So like, I still think being in the studio, being in where was the Opera Song Hubs, the Roundhead, seeing the studio and feeling that vibe, it's very unique and very special. I think me being locked in my bedroom and being able to produce, you can get something for sure. You can get something special there too, but I'm now leaning toward the other side of things. Do you know what I mean? After experiencing it, I'm like, wow, this is awesome, and working with other people and creating. But in saying that, my career did start in a bedroom. I started on a laptop with keys missing because my daughter used to rip the keys off because I was trying to make beats like this. So I'm very much that dude, and like I think it came down to just belief, man, like like the old-fashioned believe you can do it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which sounds corny, but I mean, I didn't have much else. I didn't have much money. I didn't have much food, and I think every producer at one point stole their plugins from a torrent site or something. So I had like, all the ripped versions that when they updated, like started glitching. I went through that whole thing. That was my beginning.
Yeah. I would just like to say that Antonoff in no way endorses the theft of copyright material.
Sorry. I buy everything now. Yeah.
No, I'm just teasing. Sorry, Kings. Another question that's coming through a lot, which is kind of a bit of a business admin question, really, is about splits. And when you're working with collaborators and stuff like that, and how you determine how you share these works that you create together. Because I imagine that there would be, again, there's 1,000 ways to split a song, and it will sometimes depend on like even the power dynamics and the people that you're working with and all of that stuff. How does it work for you, Alex? Do you have a set way that you do this in advance, that you negotiate in advance, or is it something that happens as the song evolves?
No, it's definitely something that's done beforehand.
Yeah.
It's kind of just the unspoken, like if I go in with an artist, it's a 50-50 co-write. I think it would just be so messy and so dramatic if it was kind of piecing it together at the end of the session of who wrote what and who, because I think it's also very much someone could shoot out an idea that is not used, but then it could spark someone else, to say this word or that. And I just think that it is this kind of, I like that it's kind of set before, that it's going to be an equal thing. I mean, especially when you're in the room, I think things, down the line, someone could jump on and rewrite something and then it kind of will change. But in terms of just like when you're in the room with people, it's just always been an equal split, which I think is just, is the easiest way to go about it, because it is just all about you're in the environment together and you're bouncing ideas. And it is, even if someone's maybe not contribute, like it's just someone might play a sound that inspires a melody, and it's, even though that person came up with that melody, it's like maybe they wouldn't have if there wasn't that sound or that progression or that. So I just think it's always been kind of equal splits, which I think makes things just way easier.
Yeah, because it can be such an awkward and uncomfortable conversation to have with people.
Totally. You don't want to be tearing a song apart and saying I wrote this and I get this. I just think it would suck a lot of the like joy and magic out of sessions if that was what we had to kind of do afterward.
Is that the same for you, Devin?
I definitely would love to practice that way. I haven't always had that pre-organized. Sometimes I've been in sessions where ends up being more writers after the session, and you end up getting into divvying up splits and but I like the Nashville way. It's that I wholeheartedly agree that if you're not thinking about the mathematics in the session, that's ideal. You're just doing what's best for the song. And if one person comes in looking, as Kanye would put it, looking really good in a pair of jeans, and they inspire a lyric, give them a damn cut. It's like, do what's best for the song, and quite often taking the math out of it is good.
Yeah. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I think like what Devin said there. If you're worrying about fighting for your idea to be the winning idea rather than what's best for the song, then you're going to end up with a crappy song, So
it's not a competition.
It's not a competition, and you kind of need to feel like you can throw stuff out there without, and maybe that's not going to be the part, but maybe that inspires the part, or maybe just having a chat with someone, having a conversation, maybe like that's enough to inspire this certain thing, or I always, it's nice to go into a session with the understanding that it's going to be split equally, so that you can feel comfortable to suggest things, and just whatever happens.
That's I guess it frees everything up.
Totally.
And is it the same for you too, Joel?
Yeah, it is. I feel like that's generally the way when it comes to writing sessions, especially if everyone's going in there and writing something from scratch, then however many people are in the room is how it's going to be split. I think, like Josh said, if you feel like you're having to fight for an idea, to try and get your percentage up, even if it's not, even if it's not the best idea, it just makes for an uncomfortable environment, and it's all about feeling comfortable and feeling safe, and it just gets messy otherwise. And then from there, like the guys were saying, if other people are getting on the track and rewriting a verse, or they redo the chorus or something or whatever, it's then things change. But I think in that initial formation of the song, it's so much easier and so much more comfortable if you have that agreed beforehand.
Yeah, because I guess any kind of tension would really interfere with anyone's ability to kind of be open about what they're trying to open with their ideas and stuff like that. Do you have a go-to place to start? Like when you start on a session working from scratch, Joel, do you, like, is there something that you'll almost habitually start doing in order to generate an idea?
If we're starting something from scratch, I usually like to just I usually start earlier, so I'll go in there and just play around with ideas and kind of get the shitty ideas out of my system, or hopefully. But I like to have a couple of things to play with, like even if like nothing crazy, just like a chord progression or a couple of things that I'll try and get into the headspace of the artist a little bit and think, do these chords feel like they could work for this person? Is this a cool sound? Like just have a little something to start with, because I hate that feeling of, especially if it's a session where you're working with somebody for the first time and just, you have your chat to get to know each other, and then you're like, so, like, what shall I try and do? And then you turn around and you're like, shit, what the hell am I gonna, what am I gonna play? So just having a couple of little things like that for me is very helpful to just make me feel a little less anxious about the situation.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll have more things fleshed out, if it was like a hip hop artist, I might have like, a loop of some sort that I've made, or a few loops that I've made. But generally I like to just have some chords that I think could be cool. And then often, they might say, oh, actually, no, those aren't right. I'm not in the mood for that today, but let's try something else. And then at least I've kind of got that out of my system and can move on to something different.
Yes. And it sends you in a direction rather than just having all possible directions in front of you. to kind of
completely, yeah, at least starts the conversation, and then they might say, oh well, actually I was thinking about, you know, this today, and so, you know, it's just a way of getting the ball rolling, basically.
Do you enforce restrictions on yourself too? Like, do you say, okay, I'm not going to use this, or do you like close things in to kind of direct your energies ever?
I mean, not necessarily. I just do what I think. I just try and get into a bit of a headspace of what's going to feel right on the day. And that's something that's probably just developed as an instinct over the years, you know, like at first I was probably, you know, I definitely feel like at first I was, when I met Alex on that, when I went over to Australia to do that writing camp, I'd never collaborated with anybody that I didn't know before. Everyone that I'd worked with, like even I'd worked with Ella, but we'd kind of gotten to know each other over a few months before we made Royals, you know, like sporadically here and there she would come to the studio. And so that was like a whole learning curve for me, was how to work in the room with people that I've just met and how to get a good result in that situation. It was terrifying at first. I wrote the worst songs that week, and it was so funny because I'd already written Royals, and obviously it hadn't come out yet, and so I didn't know that it was going to be what it became. But it's just funny thinking that I had written this song that, you know, won Song of the Year at the Grammys, and then went and wrote a bunch of shit songs like after the fact. Like, it's not, you never, you know, I write a lot of shit songs still to this day. Like, it's you're not gonna nail it every time. So yeah, it just took time to get into that headspace and figure out a few things, and in terms of how it works collaborating with people that you've just met.
What about you, Josh? How do you begin that process? You collaborate a lot with lots of different people here too, although in New Zealand it's kind of hard because everybody knows everybody anyway. But
very
do you have
incestuous in New Zealand.
Yeah, it is.
Everyone's working with everyone. Yeah, I've been doing more. I used to like to start completely fresh with no ideas, simply because you know, it'd be hard to know how the artist was feeling on the day and kind of what they wanted to do. But then, I mean, there's nothing more scary than, like Joel was saying, when you finish your little intro chat and then you turn to look at your screen and you're like, oh, now what? And you go to the same old chords every time and like same old sounds, and you start panicking because, you know, it might take you 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour to go down the rabbit hole and find something that you want to work on. But now I do the same thing where I have a couple of things in my back pocket, or I try and, you know, it might be a chord progression, or it might be an idea that I think would be interesting for this artist to try, and maybe something a little bit different for them, especially like knowing that often the first time you do a session with someone, there's a little bit more leeway. Like, you can kind of get away with a little bit more. So you can get them outside of their comfort zone a little bit more if you're kind of nice about it. And they're, you know, they might not usually do it, but because they're trying to be polite, they'll sort of humor you for a bit, and you might end up doing something kind of interesting. But probably more often than not, the ideas that I try and pre-prepare actually are like, the artist doesn't like at all. And like Joel says, you kind of get them out of your system rather than kind of being in the session trying to hammer them out and doing all that kind of thing. So again, there's no kind of set way. People, like artists, might come in and say, oh, I've got a chord progression that I like, or they want to pick up the guitar, or, you know, I like, we've got some great synths and stuff here, so people, like, they might want to go and play on those, and hopefully that sparks something. Or, you know, I try and find a common ground with music that they like and music that I like, and what if we could do something at this tempo, and I like how this song has that kind of guitar hook or something. Like, we could try something like that and see how that sounds. But there's no kind of set way that I start a session, I'd say.
So the song of yours that I picked to talk to you about was Hot Love by Leisure. I love that song. It's so great. But I was also particularly interested because there's like 93 producers in that band.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting song, because that Hot Love that's not really, I mean, everyone produces in Leisure. There's not one producer. A lot of the time it might be Jace or I in front of the actual laptop when we're recording and stuff. But say Hot Love is a perfect example, because that was a beat from Jordan, you know, he's got a project called High Hoops. And that song, we had put out Got It Bad, and that was doing really well. And then we were scrambling to get like a second single. And Jordan had this beat for Hot Love, well, what became Hot Love anyway. So then everyone kind of jumps on that. And so he'll send me or Jace the stems, and we'll put it into the computer, and then we can replace things or restructure it up, and everyone sort of puts their input in.
Can that turn nasty? Like, I can imagine like things getting down to like really acute detail.
Well, all I have to do is I bring this along with me, and I go, "Are you sure? Like, maybe I think you should listen to me." No, really,
that's awesome.
It's a really interesting dynamic, because it's never gotten. Everyone has different opinions and like different ideas on things, but it's kind of like a perfectly balanced dynamic in the sense that everyone. I think it only works because we have projects outside of Leisure. You know, if Leisure was our only if that was our only outlet for music, I think it would be way more difficult. But you know, Jason and we get to do pop music and that kind of thing. George gets to do, you know, his music, and Tom and Jaden does his own thing as well. So we kind of get all that other stuff out of our system, and then with Leisure, we can we all kind of meet in the middle. And basically, if songs just die off if we don't all agree on them, or maybe two people love a certain song, but if the other people don't, then unfortunately it doesn't really see the light of day. So it's very democratic.
Oh, Alex, I mean, you also have collaborated with other producers, like Jack Antonoff, for instance. Is collaborating with another producer a different animal from collaborating with an artist?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to like very quickly establish what each of your roles are, so you're not in some kind of like synth battle, you know, at the start. It's like, it's kind of, I don't know, and I found some really great producers that I love co-producing with, because it is kind of like we just know, all right, you're gonna focus on that and I'm gonna focus on that, and I think that's almost when you need even less of an ego, I think, is co-producing, because you just have to kind of let just, I guess, relinquish a little bit of control. And I mean, I love it because I feel like I always learn a bunch of stuff, and I find it really inspiring and really interesting to watch how other producers work, and for them to see how I would work. And but I think the main thing is just try not to get caught in some kind of like weird musical ego battle of like, my kick is louder, therefore it's going to be the kick, you know, and just kind of, again, just doing what's right for the song. And just because even if I'm in a session with another producer, we're still very focused on the artist and the song. And I feel like those are the producers that I like working with the most, is that are still just, really considerate of the songwriting process, and aren't just kind of like blasting beats while, you know, the artist is trying to kind of work out melodies and stuff. And I just really like working with producers that still put the song first.
I can imagine. I mean, I'd love to see an epic synth battle between producers, though. Like, I'd be fascinated to see how that would turn out. The song of yours, Lucky Strike, that you did with Troye Sivan, what I really love so much about that, and actually a lot of the songs that you produce, is you've got this beautiful sensibility with pads. You know, like you kind of put these beautiful pads in behind stuff. It's almost like they're hiding, you know, and then you just kind of become more aware of them and more aware of them. They kind of ease in and out of the structure of the song. How do you go about constructing a pad when you're working with another producer who might have a sense of how they want to fill out or create a structure around a song?
Damn.
Is it a synth battle?
I mean, it might be. I think, I don't know. I think I'll always fight for, I mean, if anything I feel is competing with the vocal or distracting from the story or the lyric, I find that's when I'll kind of get a little bit more just kind of vocal about like, all right, let's just like tone that back. But I don't know. Luckily, I honestly have had such great experiences like co-producing that I've never kind of been in a session where I've been like, oh my God, I can't wait to mute this person's synth as soon as they leave because it's so obnoxious and so huge and taking up all the space. You know, I've been really lucky that I've worked with people that are kind of definitely think about it in the same way that I do and are just there to support, you know, support the song. Yeah, so I think it's kind of, I like working with producers that understand dynamics and also that aren't there to put their like production stamp on something and are just like make sure that the song is supported and it's the best that it can be. And
a number of people have asked about how to approach a producer to collaborate with. You know, there's a lot of people wondering if they've got a project or if they've got work that they want to do and they're really interested in collaborating with a producer. What are the ways in which they can go about starting that conversation with producers that they don't know but that they want to potentially collaborate with? Do you have any advice, Kings, for how somebody might approach you to work with you, for example?
Man, Instagram.
Really?
Like the most, just DMs, slide in the DMs. It's like, I work with a bunch of people just from being hit up on Instagram. I'm pretty
You're going to get like 10,000 DMs probably.
I get a couple already, and it's like I try to take the time out to listen to one. The thing that I think I do that's probably like I'll say, oh no, I don't want to work. Like, oh no, I'm not feeling it, but good luck, man, smash it. Like that's kind of like, but then if I like it, I'll be like, yo, let's catch up. Where you from? And so it's kind of like it's like Tinder for beats.
Yeah. Instagram is Tinder for beats. Well, I'm 47 years old, so I didn't know that.
But that's what happens.
Yeah, right. What about, so working at the level that you work at, Joel, is that the same? Can somebody direct message you on Instagram with a track that they want you to work on?
Give out your email, Joel.
Yeah, what's your email address?
No, I do. I mean, I get a lot of really funny ones, actually. I get a lot of stuff from a lot of people these days. And even when, going back to when we first released the Lorde songs, the whole story was she had these great lyrics and then I helped her turn them into songs. And so I would get emails from people being like, my wife has always written poems and she's 65 and she's still got a really good singing voice. And would you be like, so I mean, for me, I have a manager and a publisher, and people go through them. But I think for just people in general, like King said, just approaching people is the best way to go about it. Just if you like somebody, send them something that they, send them something that you love of yours, and see if they like it. Like I'll still listen. Like I listen to a lot of stuff, and I'll listen to stuff that I get sent. But there can be quite a lot to go through, and a lot of it's like pretty interesting in a good way. And so it's but I think just putting yourself out there is it's the best way to go about it, for sure.
Devin, what is the best way for somebody to tell you as their producer that they don't like the mix? That's a question from a viewer, not my question. Is there a good way? Is there a gentle way? Is there a straightforward way that people can communicate when they're not liking the work that a producer is doing?
Yeah, just be honest. I think I'd be fair to say everyone would feel pretty similar here. Again, it comes back to supporting the artist, and if they're not happy with it, then you've got to re-up. And they might be completely wrong, so you've got to find that middle ground if they're completely wrong. and that's obviously subjective, but that's kind of what we get paid for. So yeah, honesty. Hopefully, like everyone said, there's that comfort in the room, and they feel they can be honest with you and go, I'm something about it. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling the mix, or I'm not feeling the arrangement, or I'm not feeling the sonics we have. I'm not feeling the vocal production. I don't like the performances. Okay, sweet. Let's relook at it.
Yeah.
I've had heaps of sessions where I've done a whole day with someone, and then at the end of the day, the artist will announce that, oh, actually, it's not really my kind of thing, or and you think, okay, great. Well, what a waste of a day. Like if people had just been straight up from the start and said, I don't know if I really like this, or I don't feel comfortable doing this style or something, then it saves a lot of, hassle later on.
Me and Devin had an experience with this. We had with the song that we did with Mos Q. We had a hip hop joint, and halfway through the session, I was like, "This sucks, man. I suck," because I rapped, and I was like, I fucking hate it. And then the bro jumped on, and I was like, "Oh, I like it now." And we stuck in there. But there was a whole moment where I was talking to Devin, and I was like, "Bro, what do you think?" And he's like, "I like it," and we had to kind of do this thing where I was like, "Nah," and but we got there, and now it's like the baddest song. Plug. It's the baddest song. Yeah.
Are you going to release it?
Oh, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
You kind of have to now, bro.
Yeah, I know. It's a beast. It is. It's crazy.
I'm going to just keep messaging you on Instagram until you release it.
Yeah.
It's, I think that it's a really difficult conversation for anybody to have under any circumstances when you have to be honest about something that's not working for you. It's like, and I think that in a creative situation, you are revealing things about yourself when you're contributing ideas. And so I think a lot of people find that conversation exceptionally difficult to have, to be able to, knock back something that's not working for them without feeling like they're doing an injury to the person that they're working with. Do you find that just because you work a lot, that you collaborate a lot, you get thicker skin, that that it's something that you can practice, actually, like dealing with constructive criticism and adjusting what you're doing in order to fit somebody else's vision? What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I like to kind of preface at the start of sessions that I'm really not precious. And if the first thing I play they absolutely hate, I'm just like, please feel free to say that you hate it and it's totally wrong and whatever. And yeah, because I think at the end of the day, I feel like the producer kind of has to, we're talking about ego before, but like, yeah, kind of put that aside, because you're there to help an artist create their vision. And I think I feel that if I preface that kind of early, I hope that it will kind of make an artist or a collaborator feel more comfortable if I was to kind of gently do the same. If they were kind of going somewhere that I was a little bit like, I don't know. I think for me, it's just like setting up this environment that just feels very comfortable and that they feel able to, be vulnerable and vice versa. And yeah, I think it's just kind of about no one being too precious, because I just think that can stunt creativity. I think it's just about putting stuff out there and getting, and just not not letting your ego get in the way and not being, I think you do definitely get a thicker skin and become more confident with that kind of stuff. But I'm still, I think I used to be rattled by kind of going down like a rabbit, like spending an hour on a track or something, and then the artist being like, actually, this is so, like, can we actually do something like this? And they play a different reference, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. And now it just feels like it's so much nicer when you don't put that pressure on yourself, and you're just always prepared for the artist to kind of tap you on the shoulder and be like, I'm not feeling it anymore. I think you kind of have to be prepared for that and just kind of not take yourself too seriously, because you could, you know, have spent 3 hours on something and they switch it up, and then that's when you like catch this thing that's actually what was meant to be the whole time, and you just had to go through this other experience first. Like I've had times where I spent 6 hours on a song and we've scrapped it at the last minute and then written something in 30 minutes that's ended up being like just so much better and something that actually, you know, works. But yeah, I think about just like not being precious. And I always tell people, I say like, you can be as brutal as you want if you're really not something, because at the end of the day, I'm here for them, and I want them to go away with something that, you know, they really love. And yeah, so I think you can't be too precious. But I definitely think it gets easier the more time you get told that it doesn't sound right.
And I guess just that whole thing about somehow being able to hold on to a degree of objectivity, even as you get more and more attached to ideas over the course of working on them, that somehow there's some gift that really great producers have of being able to still always have a view from above over what they're working on. Before we finish, because we are about to run out of time, I would like to ask each of you if you can offer a tip to people who are working in their environments at home, like a technical production tip about how to gather objectivity when it's needed. Like, is there something that you can do? Like, can you take out the low mids, or can you record something a specific way, or run a filter over something that will influence the way that you're hearing something, or add a thing, or spark a thing when you're sitting in a vacuum at home, trying to work out if you've got something good happening in your session? Can we start with you, Alex? Is that putting you on the spot?
No, that's okay. I mean, I think it's less technical. I think like sometimes you have to know when to step back from something and give your ears a break. I think listening to stuff in like different environments is cool. Like putting something on in the car and listening to it as you drive, like might give you a different perspective. But I think, yeah, taking time away. I don't think there's kind of like, you know, a magic plug-in that will kind of help you. I don't know. I always just feel like time and space away, or listening to like other music, I think. And also just like if you're not feeling it one day, I don't know how creative you guys have been in quarantine, but like it's kind of tough sometimes to Zoom sessions, you know, are really interesting and a new thing. And I'm just trying not to like put too much pressure on myself, and yeah, and feeling like, all right, I've worked on this for 6 hours, I'm gonna like not listen to it for a day and come back to it with fresh ears, and then it will just click, you know. And so I think a lot of it is about space and time. If you're getting like frustrated on ideas, or if you're not feeling inspired, it's like just, you know, go and read a book or watch a movie or go for a walk, or try and, you know, you don't have to just kind of bang your head against the wall, because I just think sometimes taking a break is like the simplest solution.
And so often the hardest thing to do. Like it's hard to discipline yourself to do that.
100%. It's so easy to just sit there for another 4 hours and completely ruin everything, you know, than just like to step back and be like, all right, my ears are tired, you know, I need to take a break. What
about you, Devin?
Yeah, again, pretty much what Alex said. Hitting all the nails on the head there, Alex. Specifically coming back to maybe a little bit around quarantine, and talking about maybe what's, you know, what we are all going to have to, I guess, adapt in some way. I've just been really enjoying doing short spurts online with people, doing so, you know, maybe 1 to 2 hour little Zoom sessions, and then hopefully at the other end they can record some ideas, okay, and send some stems and also share sessions. And I've kept working through, just like I think Josh and Joel said, they like to have little ideas before sessions, and I've been using this time to do that as well. Just create lots of little ideas and changes and make samples. And I'm a bit of a workaholic, so I find if I don't try and do something every day, I get a little bit sad. So I've just been constructing things and doing
like making like a library or a palette, like creating a palette that you can return to when you
Yeah, just ideas, little beat libraries and some chord samples and changes, and yeah, that's been me. And trying to spend more time with the kids, you know, be a good dad.
Yeah. That's what the hardest thing of all to do sometimes, eh? Feel like when you're trapped at home with your family that you can actually be a good member of that family.
Yeah, it's probably a fair assumption that everyone here has a workspace at home, and it's it's quite hard discerning the difference sometimes, but I'm trying to get better.
Yeah. I'm not proud of every parenting moment that I've had during this period of quarantine, Devin. I'm not proud of all of it. What about you, Josh? Because you've got a little tiny.
I do have a little tiny baby. You mean how has my quarantine been, or what do I do to gain a bit of subjectivity on the songs? Well, I think
tips and tricks.
Tips and tricks. I mean, I think the best way to know, I'm sure we all feel the same way at the end of the night when we've written the next #1 single and we've written the best thing we've ever done. You sleep on it and you wake up the next morning and realize, maybe you'd had a few too many beers, or maybe you've been working on something for too long. I think the best way to gain perspective on what you're working on is to play it to someone else, and even though it's the hardest thing to do, because you never want to play anything that's not finished to anyone, when something's still a work in progress. But as soon as there's someone else in the room who hasn't been involved in the song, I feel like you instantly hear it from their point of view. And that can be a real eye-opener, or that can be a real moment where you're like, oh, wow, maybe this song shouldn't have like a 90-second intro, or the stuff where immediately things become apparent. So I think that would be my tip, would be, play your works in progress to people. And then there's a real, I think it's a whole other conversation, but there's a real art to taking feedback as well, and filtering through feedback and working out what, you could play something to your friend who goes to jazz school, and no matter what, they're not going to like any kind of pop music that you do, or, play it to mum and dad and they're not going to really like it, but it's, working out what feedback to take on and what to change. I think that in itself is its own art.
Yes, what that song really needs is a G minor 7th with a flat 9 and an F sharp in the bass.
Crunchy.
Yeah.
Oh, Kings?
Tips. Yeah, I'm going to say something that's probably different to what everyone said, but it was kind of what helped me through my first phase of my career. I don't think I've ever had writer's block. Let me elaborate. I've written millions, I shouldn't say millions, thousands of terrible songs, but I never stopped writing them.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference between me not having a writer's block. Like, a lot of the people, I think, when they say writer's block, they didn't write something that they wanted to. But if you have no expectation, I've got heaps of songs, man. Tons. Would I show the world? Probably not. So I write through my writer's block. Yeah. So if I had one tip for those people who are similar to me and Devin, we're workaholics, and I don't sleep very often anyway. So I write, and I just keep writing. When I do feel like I'm not writing, I guess, productively, I'll learn something about the art form. Like, I'll spend 2 hours watching Timbaland make a beat, see the way he does a kick, and then I'll go back to writing. And then if it's not working still, I'll go learn something about cameras, and then go shoot a video for my music video, and then go back to writing. I never don't spend the time doing what I love, because I love it so much. But yeah, that's for anyone that's hungry out there, that's at the beginning of with their laptop with the broken keys.
Yeah. Which keys were broken?
Oh, like the whole, just anyone she could touch. All the important ones.
Yeah.
The emails were interesting. Yeah.
E would be a terrible key to not have working, because you use E more than any other letters, apparently.
It's actually framed in my studio, my laptop. I'll send a photo.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Joel?
All of the above apply. It's all great advice. I feel like I use all of that, you know, when I'm working on music. Taking a break, not being too hard on yourself when you're getting stuck, and just like taking a step back can often just be like, that can be enough. Like you can walk out of the room and be like, I know what it needs, and then just go straight back in if you want to, you know. But sometimes just taking a step back or listening to something other music is you know, it's just gonna just gives your ears a break from hearing the same thing over and over again, and you get that perspective. And I like, even when I'm just finishing up songs, I like playing it in here and like walking out there and listening to it from the other room, or listening to it from outside, and you hear things differently. Yeah, it's and having said that, as well, the idea of you know, for the hungry up and comers out there, that to just create regardless and not be too worried about if it's good or not, just doing stuff is super important. You learn something every time. And you know, I still to this day have this like excitement where I'm like, you know, today could be the day. I always say this, but I'm like, you know, today could be the day where I write the best song that I've ever written, you know. And then usually at the end of the day, I'm like, nope, that wasn't it. But then, you know, then you're like, but tomorrow could be the day where I write the best song I've ever written. So having that, it's kind of like a blessing and a curse, because you're never quite satisfied with what you've done. But you just never know. You never know what's going to come out. And so I think just persevering, but then also not feeling too guilty when it's time to just take a step back is you got to, you know, watch out for your mental health as well, because we're all sensitive artists, and we can be pretty hard on ourselves. Yeah, so. And
it can be very difficult to quiet that demon as well when you suddenly start getting down on your ideas. And you know, it's a lovely idea actually to kind of think about the fact that tomorrow you might write your best song, because it is something that you always want to have in your future. Like, it's certainly not a feeling like you want to have that in your past, like, well, actually I wrote my best song last year.
Yeah,
that would be bad. Yeah.
So there's like a small amount of fear driving you there as well, like, oh no, what if I've written the best thing I'm ever going to write? Like, I've got to keep going, got to keep trying, you never know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, wonderful people, thank you so very, very much for all contributing all of these amazing thoughts and insights and tips and plug-in recommendations and psychological insights, relationship management. Thank you for everything that you've contributed. I know that there will be a lot of people who are very grateful for everything that you've said. And but now I'm going to go and listen to that awesome playlist that, you know, full of music that you all love or have created. Our hearty thanks and gratitude to you all. And I am very much looking forward to hearing all of the great songs that you will one day write.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Victoria.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Epra. See you.
Bye.
Bye.